But to this massive outage at Optus today, disruptions for 11 hours, total chaos, mobile phones knocked out, customers' internet knocked out, biggest single such outage in our history. The disruption was extraordinary. Some hospitals couldn't take phone calls. Trains to Victoria stopped for an hour, were delayed for hours afterwards. Businesses relying on Optus, they couldn't process payments, and customers using it couldn't pay on their phones. And the uncertainty was made worse by Optus's appalling failure to get out fast and often with updates. I mean, the boss of Optus gave only 2 radio interviews I could count, and that was hours after the outage had started.
Why were you missing in action this morning?
Actually, we've had messages out from the beginning. We have messages on our website.
Yeah, but people have got no internet, so they can't access the information.
Yeah, and that is why we've been focused on restoring the services. I've also done a number of interviews. We are available. Unfortunately, we understand that no message is great for our customers who are not connected.
I think Optus needs to make sure they step up and communicate with people.
Now, what caused this disaster, Optus hasn't yet said, but the fact that it started around 4 a.m, where you might normally do a software upgrade of a system at a time of least impact to customers, suggests this was an upgrade gone horribly wrong. So many questions, so let's ask an expert, Professor Nigel Fair of Monash University, a technologist, a cybersecurity specialist, and also a former very senior police officer. Professor Nigel Fair, thank you so much for joining us. What do you think caused this outage?
We believe this outage was caused via a network fault, and that's probably likely with perhaps an upgrade of the equipment. Could be software, could be hardware, could even be another vendor involved. But needless to say, it stopped the network from operating.
So incompetence, do you think? Is that all?
I think it's hard to put a finger on how it would have happened. I would have liked to have thought any upgrade before it occurs, you do it in a test environment to make sure everything works properly, and then you put it into the production environment so that you have some assurance that everything is going okay.
Can I just ask, I'm not being a conspiracy theory here, but I'm just wondering, if you were going to mount a cyber attack, right, could you achieve the same sort of result?
Well, you certainly could. Absolutely. The goal of a cyber attack is to degrade the network so that you can't use it. This is exactly the same result.
And what does it prove to you, what happened today, about our vulnerability and preparedness for this kind of thing? You know, with trains not running in Melbourne, hospitals knocked offline, people not being able to dial 000, etc., or make any calls, really.
I think it should be a wake-up call, whether it's individuals, whether it's government, and particularly whether it's business, to do your disaster recovery planning and make sure you have business continuity. You know, the same thing could happen to an organisation with the internet cable being out in the footpath and a backhoe digs through it and cuts it. You don't have access. You should practice that sort of recovery just like you should for something like this today. How are you going to operate? What's the workaround?
Did you see from the response that sort of work and preparedness had been done?
On the whole, no, I didn't. The best I saw was people sitting outside the local public library using their free Wi-Fi.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was wondering whether too much was being made of this, because while I couldn't make calls on my mobile, OptusNet of course, I still could talk on WhatsApp and Viber, and it wasn't, it wasn't offline in that sense. So I'm just wondering how serious you thought this was.
Well, I think it's serious to the extent where when hospitals can't operate and there's patients' lives at risk, that's serious. But all the way down to people that just can't get to work on time or to school, there's exam weeks on this week. Just a general inconvenience. And I think that's probably what we need to plan for, because telecommunications, it sort of cuts both ways. It's its own sector from a critical infrastructure protection perspective from the Commonwealth Government, yet it's also a horizontal and cuts across banking and finance potentially, and cloud services, lots of other health matters. So it all depends how you consume your internet and in what way. If you're doing it particularly through phone calls and SMSs, today probably wasn't a good day for you.
Now, I asked before, you said you could get the same effect with a cyber attack on Optusnet or other carriers. And I'm just wondering, this could actually happen not just at Optusnet, it could happen at Vodafone, it could be a mass attack, like we saw Israel turn the internet in Gaza off at a time of war. This actually could be done to us, couldn't it? And if this is a taste of it with just one carrier knocked off, my goodness, we could be extremely vulnerable to a really concerted attack.
Well, we certainly could be. I have some degree of confidence both through our Commonwealth government entities, particularly the Signals Directorate and the Australian Cyber Security Centre. We've got some brilliant people that are monitoring the internet feeds as it comes in and out of the country to pick up these sorts of things. Our big carriers, particularly Optus and Telstra, have got amazing cyber security preparedness themselves. So I have a degree of confidence for Australians and business and government that won't happen. Similar with the banks, they invest hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into cyber security protections. We can never say never, but I have a degree of comfort that it won't happen.
And finally, is there anything that the government should do or state governments should do to make us less vulnerable? Our systems, we can't have trains knocked out for an hour or more. We can't have hospitals unable to receive calls. Is there something more we can do?
I don't think there's much government can do. Most of our critical infrastructure is either owned and or operated by the private sector. There's a Cyber and Critical Infrastructure Centre as part of the Commonwealth Government Department of Home Affairs. They actively work with the owners and operators of critical infrastructure, each of the 13 nominated sectors. So I'd like to think that they've been busy today and will be continuing to be busy talking to each of these sectors saying, well, this is a great use case scenario. How did you come out of it? And then start doing some probably deeper and more enhanced continuity exercises and probably just thinking about the what ifs and how you respond to them from a tabletop perspective.
I tell you what, we've got to wake up to do all that work now. Absolutely. Professor Nigel Fair, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.